Welcome to the World Philosophy and Religion podcast with Dr. Marc Gafni. In today's episode, we are talking about power. Many of us feel a certain amount of shame, but a deep desire to actually express our power in the world. Our power is the ability to make change and to make transformation. And the question is, how can we reclaim that power or claim it for the first time at all in a way that is non-destructive, in a way that actually works for the best for the future of not only ourselves, but humanity as a whole. So in this episode, Dr. Marc Gafni is going to go through 3 stages of power: the pre-tragic, the tragic, and the post-tragic, which will unlock a whole new way of being able to access the power inside of yourself and your life. I hope you enjoy this episode with Dr. Marc Gafni.
Here we go, my friends. Here we go. So I want to walk through some steps here that I've been thinking about a lot. I'm not going to talk about Hanukkah because it's not Hanukkah yet here in Vermont, right? I want to create a frame, which I want to talk about this week and next week, this frame of the pre-tragic, tragic, and post-tragic, power, pain, suffering, joy. So let's see if we can find our way in it. There's so much I almost don't know where to start. So let me see if I can find our way in. So I wake up this morning and I practiced. It was an intense late night last night. Zach and I spoke extensively. And then I glance at my phone and I see, at a place where I once ran a Hanukkah event in Australia. When I was in Australia, we did a Hanukkah event at Bondi Beach in Australia. I know the beach. And colleagues of mine did a Hanukkah event there that got shot up, 11 people killed. Right? Right? What does that even mean? Brown University shooter. But let's not even go to Sudan. Let's not even go to Sudan, where the level of death and rape and destruction and cruelty is unimaginable. And of course, we don't hear a word about it, right? Because there's no covert anti-Semitic issue at play, so no one protests it. You don't even hear anything about it. No one on this thread has ever mentioned it, right? Because it's just simply not talked about. Then let's go to the Ukraine, which we wrote a book about 4 or 5 years ago when, whatever the time was, and Ukraine hadn't stopped. And I can keep going. It's like, Like, how do you actually get up, move through it, and engage your day? What do we do? Right? Do we look away? Right? So most people look away. You glance at it for a second. It's too much to absorb. And you go on with your day. Right? Or it hits you for a second. You go on with your day. But most people, it doesn't even hit for a second. It's just kind of like, right? That's bad. And they that's terrible. Keep scrolling. So we live in this reality in which we're exposed to immediate information about outrageous pain and suffering and brutality. And not just immediate information, but often visual images. What do I do? I don't know how to impact it. I don't know how to change it. I don't know what to do about it. Right? This place where Mark did a party on Bondi Beach. Someone else did a party and 11 people just got killed, and my friend the rabbi got killed as well. But that's just one story. We can tell the same story again and again in Sudan. And again and again. Again and again and again and again and again and again. Right? In the Ukraine. And again, I'm gonna be clear here, and I'm gonna make the point, but I'm not putting Gaza on the list in the same way I would not put allies bombing Germany on the list. It's not the same situation. That's not a right moral analogy. It's not true. And that doesn't mean there's not unimaginable tragedy, right? In German cities being bombed, and what happened to Germany at the end of World War II, right? There was unimaginable tragedy, right? But it's not the same. There's not a moral equivalence. Now, stay with me in this. And if we can't find that, if we can't distinguish with that, right? Then oh my God, then the world will actually fall apart. There actually won't be a world. I guarantee you that. I guarantee you 1,000%. If we cannot make a distinction between the Allies and the Nazis, we're gone. But that's the position of pacifism. Pacifism in that stance will destroy the world. Okay, let's stay in the shared conversation, which is, what do we do in response to the pain? And in response to the pain, which is both the pain of what happened, but we can't let ourselves feel it fully because of the shame of powerlessness. Right? We're shamed by our powerlessness. And actually the core of shame is powerlessness itself. We have a shame what I call a shame of finitude. And the shame of finitude, right, it's the shame of our powerlessness, appears in many ways. Sort of, we have a shame at our own mortality. We have a shame at death itself. Death reminds us that we're mortal. Death reminds us that, oh my God, death reminds us, right? We feel mortality. And when we see death happening randomly, horribly, senselessly, we're shamed because we feel like we have no power to impact it, which I believe is not true. But that's our feeling, and we don't in the immediate moment. 2, we're shamed because we're reminded of death itself. Right? And there, but for the grace of God, right, go I. We're shamed in our early childhood because we're humiliated in trying to get our basic needs met. We're shamed in our early childhood because we're literally unable to get our basic needs met. Right? Like, right? Like to get this deeply, right? I'm shamed because I'm humiliated in getting my basic needs met. I can't get them met. I'm shamed at, when I experience my own animality. Right? We get shamed because we feel our animality is kind of an abandonment of our beauty, and we don't yet know how to embrace our animality and weave our animal and angel into one, which is part of a different conversation we're not having now. But there's a shame of powerlessness, right, at the very, very core. Okay? So to respond to the shame of powerlessness, I have to become powerful. Does that make sense? The only possible way to respond to the shame of powerlessness is to actually become powerful. Okay. So to do that, and that's what we've been talking about these last weeks, right? How do we actually become powerful? Right? How do we respond to the shame of powerlessness? So if we actually have an experience of the shame of death, we have to fight for life. We also have to realize something about the continuity of consciousness. We have to know that life goes on beyond death. So we have to both fight for life, we have to stand for life, we have to actually be all in for all life, we have to protect life, right, as a sacred value, and we can't make life an idolatrous value, meaning that life in this world is the only value. Because if that was true, then the world would be, as the existentialist claimed, absurd. We would be in Sartre's being and nothingness. No. Actually, there's a continuity of consciousness. Actually, life goes on. Actually, there's a story and a thread of reality that moves beyond death. So we need to know that. We need to kind of understand how to get our fundamental primal needs that were humiliated met. We need our need to be embraced and held and hugged and licked and kissed and tenderly eye-gazed with the mother in all the ways it didn't happen. We need to be able to do that in some way with our partner, whatever it looks like something different with everyone, but just even holding in a full hug and not getting pushed away, right? We can rest in each other. We can hug, we can look each other in the eyes, right? We can actually experience our partner saying to us, as we said last week, your need is my allurement. That's all. These are all important. But right now, there's something more fundamental. I want to talk about something more fundamental here. When I see shootings happening all over the world, when I see existential risk in full play, right? If I actually get it, if I actually don't turn away, right? When I see the potential of the death of our humanity, or of the death of humanity, and what all of these are all signs of the world moving in a particular direction, a devastating direction. right? A devastating direction, different than 500 years ago, because we have exponential technologies that have the capacity to actually destroy reality, because we live in a global civilization, not a local civilization. Right? We're not in any way in the same situation that we're in before. I've talked about that at length in different conversations. We're in a unique moment in human history. So in this unique moment in human history, in order to take power, right, we need to be able to impact the travesty, the tragedy, right, happening in front of us. So from a pre-tragic position, right, my friends? From a pre-tragic position, if I'm pre-tragic, so what I basically do is I essentially do one of two things. What's my pre-tragic move here? Anybody? My pre-tragic move is I say, A, existential risk is not real. I found 1,000 ways to explain why it's not true. That is simply not correct. If you want to say it clearly, it's not correct. It's not correct. But we make that move because we want to stay in the pre-tragic, right? There's a level, it's different than local tragedy is one thing, right? Local war is one thing, right? But actually the potential collapse of civilization and the potential death of humanity or death of our humanity, that's a whole other level of tragic, right? So I deny it in one way or the other. And I find a way to mock people, right, who claim that there's a genuine AI risk. I find all sorts of ways and I gather information and I actually engage in a kind of denial. That's one way to do it. The second way to do it is, right, which is done by an entire range of what they call TESCREAL, right, accelerationists, right, accelerationists or kind of techno-accelerationists. What's the problem? There was the age of carbon, which was the age of life, and now we're moving into the age of silicon. And carbon is human brain processors. We have human beings with brains that process information. And reality is the evolution of information, right? And all the human being is information, and information is basically bits and bytes, and it's a function of mechanistic brain processing. And now we have better brain processors, right? So the information is now going to move right into silicon, and so there won't be human beings. Okay, right? This is part of evolution. We've moved from carbon to silicon. I've heard at least 7 or 8 people who are leading figures in the center of, right, what I call today techno-feudalism, right, literally casually espouse that precise position and then accuse people who disagree with it of being involved in speciesism. You're kind of favoring human life above other possibilities of evolution, right? Somehow that's unfair or wrong, meaning they're appealing to some kind of hierarchy of justice, paradoxically, to a value, to accuse we're violating a value by preferring the human species. I couldn't get to a more absurd position, but it's very easy for people to gather facts wrongly and get to an absurd position. Not all positions are right. There's not moral equivalence between all positions. But those are two versions of pre-tragic. Right? In other words, right? Wow. The tragic position is there's really nothing we can do about it. Right? So either we get lost in the doomer position, right? So we need to actually celebrate our lives, love each other in the most beautiful and poignant way we can, right? We need to have dinners together, and we need to start to grieve. We need to start the process of grieving. My friend Michael Dowd, who wrote the book Thank God for Evolution and then recanted the book, and became a doomer, said before he died, right? We have to start grieving now because there's nothing to do. And there's an enormous amount of very good information that supports that possibility. It's not an insane position. Right? Let's grieve. And the reason we would grieve would be, and I want you to get the nature of the tragic position. The nature of the tragic position is the world is ultimately reductive materialist. The world is ultimately, this is the only place where there's any consciousness. Consciousness comes out of the brain, right? It's a byproduct of the brain. It's beautiful that it emerged here. It doesn't exist anyplace else. Fermi's paradox, right? It doesn't exist anyplace else in the world, or we would somehow know about it. Right? So if consciousness is extinguished here, it's extinguished in the entire galaxy. But there's no reason to think that it won't, right? Because we don't have a shared story. I've invoked the book written by Henry Kissinger a year ago, right before he died, chapter 8, where he basically says quite seriously, right, we don't have a way, we don't know what to do, right? Existential risk is real. Kissinger, Schmidt, and then Mundy, right, three major figures, all full mainstream figures, actually took existential risk quite seriously in the book. But if you read the book carefully, got to be careful, they disguised it. It was there all through the book, but they kept pulling the punch to make the book kind of not too frightening and, right, to make it, to allow it to penetrate culture. They shouldn't seem too alarmist, but basically they got it. They got the very, very real existential risks, and then they would then mitigate that getting of it with quite bland sentences, but we're sure it's going to work out. Is kind of what those sentences kind of amounted to. And if you want to read the book, really, if you want to read one book carefully, read it carefully, and read especially chapter 8 in the conclusion. So there's a sense, the tragic is there's a sense of futility. There's nothing to do. Now, who got the tragic really well and tried to move it back to the pre-tragic? Skinner. B.F. Skinner. B.F. Skinner said, oh my God, there's existential risk. He got it way before so many people. Got it way before Rachel Carson wrote, Silent Spring in 1960. He got it. He got it early on as Maslow in 1943 was talking about Maslow's hierarchy, right? Skinner was saying, Maslow, what are you doing? Do you not get existential risk? That's in the mid-40s. Huh. Maslow and Skinner knew each other. Tracking me, people? So Skinner says, what are we going to do? We're going to turn the entire world into a Skinner's box. Remember the Paul Simon song? Simon and Garfunkel, was it, right? In the mid-60s, like a rat in a maze. Who remembers that song? What was that song called? Patterns, right? Patterns. Now, the word patterns, right? Patterns. Patterns, essentially, Simon and Garfunkel, are writing this at the heyday of Skinnerian thought. This is like 1965, 66. It's before Skinner's at Harvard. It's before he's issued his 1971 book called Beyond Freedom and Dignity, where Skinner says we got to move beyond these old liberal ideas of freedom and dignity. But Simon and Garfunkel, they feel it in the air. Skinnerian thought likes all over. You've got the 60s happening and Skinnerian thought happening at the same time. And they write the song Patterns, which essentially comes from Skinner, meaning, right, there are micro patterns, right, that if we can access the micro patterns of what, a few decades later, Kahneman and Simon, who won a Nobel Prize for it, would call our fast thinking. Our fast thinking goes in patterns. Those patterns are unconscious. These are all words used by Kahneman. They're unconscious. They're reflexive, meaning automatic, right? They're habitual. So habitual, reflexive, automatic, unconscious patterns, right? That's actually who we are. We're fundamentally, that's our fast thinking. And that can be controlled. So what we will do, says Skinner, is because he met the tragic, he actually moved out of the pre-tragic, he met the tragic, he said, so what are we going to do? We're going to control the system. We're going to put the entire world into a Skinner's box. He's the Sith Lord. He's got a student, Alex Pentland, at the MIT Media Lab. The MIT Media Lab calls the worldwide Skinner's box a living laboratory. That's the word they use for it. Okay, so Skinner goes, and the MIT Media Lab, using data science, continues, right, to create this immersive environment called the web, what Benjamin Bratton calls a planetary stack, right, in which there's constant surveillance, there's micro-targeting of every user, right, and there's the ability to actually create what's called undue influence. A professor from Santa Cruz coined that term in terms of the web, undue influence, right, to fundamentally undermine the actual ability to shape our own desire, right, to make our own choices. And it creates what Skinner called and what Pentland calls invisible levers of control. And by the way, parentheses, right, this is disguised by euphemism. Everyone know the word euphemism? All my European friends, euphemism, meaning you say a word which seems like a beautiful word, but it's actually describing, right? It's actually describing, right, something entirely different. So for example, let's say I want to create addiction through the web. I'll call it engagement. You got the word engagement? So, for example, Alex Pentland from the MIT Media Lab, who I've written a whole book about, we're about to publish as a kind of acolyte of Skinner, and he's one of the architects of the web. He wrote a new book, Shared Wisdom, right? Oh, he's finally getting the idea there should be shared wisdom. So what he says by shared wisdom is, what he means by shared wisdom, this is what he calls shared wisdom. He says shared wisdom, he writes a book about AI and shared wisdom, Pentland, and he says shared wisdom has nothing to do with truth, capital T, he says. It has nothing to do with truth, small t. It has nothing to do with logic or inference or anything that exists in cosmos. So none of that's not true. So that kind of shared wisdom doesn't exist. He says stories are all made up. He says, what is shared wisdom? He says shared wisdom comes from our social learning, seems very attractive, which comes from our common sense. Then you look up common sense. How does he define common sense? Common sense is our fast thinking. Kahneman's fast thinking. And then he says, and we can regulate and shape common sense second to second by the instruments of the web. Who got what I just said? We can shape common sense and regulate it second by second and actually cause there to be a certain shared wisdom through the instruments of the web. But that's his new book. Now you could read the book and miss it. But knowing how to read makes a difference. It's completely scary. Of course it is. But that's his book, and everyone thinks it's a great book because it's not read carefully. And I stake my life on this. I've read so much of the MIT Media Lab, I could die. Okay? But I just want you to get it in the context. What does basically Skinner say? I get the tragic. This is tragic. I'm going to solve it. It's tragic. I'm going to solve it through creating the world as Walden 2. That's Skinner's existential novel about putting the world in a digital box. How often have you been on your phone and you scrolled for an hour and didn't want to? Okay, and you don't think that you're locked in the immersive environment of the web? How much time have you done doing Instagram, TikToking? Where do you think your opinions are formed from? When was the last time you read a long-form article about anything? A long-form, serious essay, right? Talking about any issue. When's the last time you read a newspaper in a serious way? So how do you get your content? How do you form your opinions? Right? How do you form your opinions? Right? You form your opinions not through your uncle, right? You form your opinions by being on the ground, by speaking to all parties, by evaluating a situation, by reading long-form essays on both sides, by comparing them carefully, by immersion in a topic. That's how you form them. No one does that. Not even close. And our average age, we've spanned the ages here. But let's say we're talking about people who are 15. You think anyone ever remembers what an article is? Does anyone remember what an article is? Or what a long-form essay is? What it means to compare two long-form essays with each other? Let me read a long-form essay on this and a long-form essay on this. Right? Or do I know the history of a topic? Right? How did things develop? Right? Over 30 years. What's the 30-year thread? Who were the major, right, players influencing, right, the formation? How does propaganda get created? Without that, you can't even move, right? So Skinner basically said, we're going to control the world by putting it in a worldwide Skinner's box of planetary enclosure. Wow, that's tragic. That's a tragic position. But the reason Skinner said that is because he was laughing at the people who said, laughing not in a good way, he was saying, you guys think you're going to save the world. You think I'm abolishing man, he says to C.S. Lewis. You think I'm abolishing man, and you write a book, C.S. Lewis, Mr. kind of, literary, spiritual, new Christian. We love you, C.S. Lewis. Lion in the wardrobe. C.S. Lewis, you're really great. You write a book called Abolition of Man in 1943, C.S. Lewis, and you mock me, Skinner says to C.S. Lewis in 1971. If you read the last 4 chapters of his book, Beyond Freedom and Dignity, you mock me, right? No, you, Mr. C.S. Lewis, and all you people are standing for the literatures of freedom and dignity, you are going to destroy the world. You are going to cause the death of humanity. And I'm going to save humanity from death by controlling the factors of existential risk, rogue terrorist bombs, right? And all the things that can go wrong, we're going to control because we're going to actually be able to see everyone. We're going to be able to research what everyone's doing. We're going to be able to influence and shape opinions. We're going to be able to control action, and no one's going to even know it's happening. We're going to create Walden 2 on a planetary scale, not because we're motherfuckers, because we want to save the world. And you, C.S. Lewis, are going to prance about in your kind of beautiful mere Christianity, new liberalism in Britain at Oxford, right? And the world's going to get destroyed. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. That is basically what I mean, it's exactly what Skinner says. Now, why does Skinner go there? Why does Pentland go there? In his book published 2 months ago called Shared Wisdom, when he basically says the entire point of, you get the euphemism? He calls the book Shared Wisdom. The point of the book is that there is no intrinsic shared wisdom. It's very easy to get caught in a wrong vector, right? Who would think that he would be saying that? Of course, it's beautiful. This gorgeous guy from MIT Media Lab who wrote Social Physics in 2014, maybe he realized he was wrong. Maybe he woke up. Maybe it's some proto version of first principles. He's talking about shared wisdom. This is great. Of course you're going to think that. That's not what he's talking about. The entire point of the book is there is no shared wisdom. That's innate and intrinsic. That it's innate and intrinsic. Right? It's like, it's innate. Shared wisdom means there's shared wisdom. You want that to mean something. You want common sense to mean something. When the Cambridge Platonist Henry Moore talked about common sense, he meant something much closer to what we're talking about in cosmological humanism. He meant there's a common sense, there's a sensuality, right? I can sense wisdom because I live in a field of value and the field of value lives in me. But we got to get this, my friends. We got to right? Literally the world's at stake. Do we know how to do sense making? And so it's our job. This is not a program. We're not in some program. We are at the leading edge doing sense making, at the edge of the edge of the edge of the edge of the edge, right? At the edge of the edge of the edge. Okay? At the edge of the edge. Let's get this. It's a big deal. Who can handle this conversation here? Everyone can. I think everyone's got this. We got this, everybody? Right? We got this. Okay, we got this. Okay, let's go. We got this. Okay, so what's the move we have to make? What's the move we have to make? This is not a hypersensitive moment. This is like a fierce moment. The world's at stake. Let's get the world, that literally, it's burning. The world's at stake. The world's literally at stake. Right? The world's at stake. So what's the move? Right? What's the power move? The power move is to be fierce and so tender and so gentle and so loving. But what's the move is to realize that Skinner was wrong. The move to the pre-tragic, to the post-tragic, the move to the post-tragic is to realize Skinner was wrong. Right? There is hope. There is future. There is possibility. Right? That we can look up. Right? We're not stuck in don't look up. We can look up. We can find our way because you are not alone. Because we're not alone in this story. Because we actually live in a cosmorotic universe. We live in a universe that's actually lined with value. Does everyone get that? We live in a universe that's lined with value. We live in a universe that is imbued with first principles and first values. We live in a universe in which there are plot lines. And those plot lines have direction. We live in a universe in which there are 4 big bangs. We live in a universe of outrageous pain. But we can respond to outrageous pain by actually accessing the currents of outrageous love. And the currents of outrageous love, it is the field of value itself. Does everyone get that? It's the field, right? And love, right? Love shorthand, but love means not Valentine's Day. That's why I refuse to use the word love. That's why I always say outrageous love or eros, right? Because love has gotten commodified. Love's become another social construct, right? Which is why people aren't getting married anymore, because love's expensive and hard and exhausting, and so love's no longer a value of cosmos, right? And that's why people are having less and less sex, because sex is a value of cosmos, and it stops being a value of cosmos. It's pretty complicated, and it's an enormous price, and it's an extravagant, investment of effort and time. There's lots safer ways to get quick hits of pleasure if that's your goal. No, it's not, right? It's outrageous love. It's eros value. The cosmos is a cosmos of eros value. It's a cosmos of outrageous love, and outrageous love is a value of cosmos, right? Outrageous love is the wisdom of cosmos, right? The Sophia, the goddess of wisdom, is Aphrodite herself. Aphrodite and Athena are one, right? And actually, reality has a direction. It has a story. It has a plot line, right? And that story is a love story. And that story is a love story. It's not a declaration. It's not a New Age declaration. It's not a human potential declaration. And that love story has to include Islam. And Islam needs to rewrite, right, the tragic parts of itself. And Christianity needs to write any parts of itself that are tragic. And if Judaism have sectors, right, that need to be written, those need to be rewritten. We need to, this is a love story. There's one story and there's one value and there's one eros and there's one wisdom. And within that one wisdom, there's pluralism and there's many intimate structures of wisdom and there's diversity, right, exponentialized. But we need a shared story of value, which is a reflection of the inherent plot lines of Cosmos as a context for our diversity, or this conversation can't be had. We have no chance. And I've got to know that wisdom is real. That's post-tragic. Post-tragic is the way to become powerful. The only way to become powerful is to be able to impact the situation. The reason I don't talk about the tragedy that happens every week, which I'm tempted to every week, is because I want to do the most powerful thing that we can do. And I want you to be so crazy sharp. I want you to be like a knight, right, with his sword raised, with Manjushri's sword of discernment, where he's not kind of defined by kind of, right, which are the San Francisco voices that are kind of like disastrously, right, failing to distinguish and make elemental moral distinctions today of the worst kind, right? It's not easy to rise above that. Right, but take Manjushri's sword in your hand and wield that sword of discernment because you are brilliant. We have to be brilliant and we have to be wise, right? And we have to create new realities. We need to be able to make distinctions. We need to go long form. We need to go deep, and we need to actually be able to articulate these distinctions. And they're hard won. They're not simple. But once you get them, they become second simplicity. Okay? So, that's what we're here to do. What we're here to do is to tell the story of value, A, and every single week we get together here and we break our heads and we break our hearts open and we're tender and we're fierce in order to write the next chapter in the story of value together. Not in my cubbyhole at Oxford where I wrote my thesis. Not in Zach's cubbyhole, right, at Harvard. Not, in Elena's Institute of Linguistics, someplace in the Soviet Union. I don't remember where. But in other words, we have to all come from our different places. We're coming together here. We're wielding the sword of Eros, Manjushri's sword, to discern for the sake of love. Right? That's what we're doing. And we're going to move beyond moral equivalences. And we're going to move beyond any kind of ethnocentric preference. Right? Anyone here who thinks anyone's blood is redder than anyone else's? I don't know where you live, but you are so crazy wrong. And that's so destructive, and that's a travesty. We don't have room for that. No, all blood's red. All tears are real. All pain is pain, right? The response and the healing of pain and suffering is the essential reason we exist, to create wholeness and beauty and possibility for every human being, which no one's left out of the circle. That is what we're here to do. And along the way, we need to wield that sword of discernment. We are kings and queens, and our swords are outstretched, and we're here, right, to actually assert power. We're here to be powerful.
I hope you're enjoying this episode with Dr. Marc Gafni. Now, I needed to take a quick second to let you know right now we are running a super special holiday book giveaway. If you would like one of our newest books, Wholemate, The Future of Relationships, you can get the ebook version completely for free right now. You can also get the paperback version for a great discounted rate. If you click the link in the description below, you can get yourself a copy. Now, what is this book going to teach you? This book is going to walk you through the 3 levels of relationship, from rolemate to soulmate to wholemate. It is the evolution through these 3 levels of relationships that make our relationships fulfilling, satisfying, and super, super intimate. Now, this isn't just about your romantic relationships. This is also about your friendships, your family relationships, your relationships to your society and the collective around you, and the relationship to yourself and to reality itself. This book is going to walk you through all different types of relationships and give you the keys to how to evolve every single type of relationship that you are in. This is also such a special book because it is not just written by Dr. Marc Gafni, but in collaboration with Barbara Marx Hubbard. Barbara Marx Hubbard's birthday is also December 22nd, which is this Monday. So this book giveaway is also in honorance and remembrance of Barbara Marx Hubbard and all the amazing evolutionary work she did in her time here on planet Earth. So thank you, Barbara, for everything you've done. And if you are interested in taking all of your relationships to a more fulfilling, more holistic, more sustainable place, then go check out the link in the description and enjoy the holiday season. It's also a perfect gift to give to either a romantic lover or to a friend or family member who you know really wants to deepen their relationships to their friends, family, and romantic partners as well. Wishing you the best holiday season and enjoy Wholemate, the future of relationships.
But at the pre-tragic, power is hijacked and it's often abusive, right? But everyone does it anyways, and there's all these covert, right, stories and ideologies that spread in the world, but they're really covers for the assertion of power. That's pre-tragic power. At tragic, we actually realize power can be abusive and power can be destructive, and postmodernity rips the mask, right, off of so many grand narratives that really appear to be drives for power. But then postmodernity becomes, right, it clears the field, right, of the old narratives. It deconstructs all the old narratives. It declares power as abusive, but then there's nothing in the place. There's nothing in place. There's no new power. There's no new story of value. So we're just left in a world in which everything's been deconstructed, which is simply fundamentally wrong. It's morally wrong. It's also intellectually wrong. It's also spiritually wrong. It also doesn't understand how to do good and deep work in advancing gnosis and advancing knowledge. So we are here doing this reconstructive project. We are the great reconstructive project. We are reconstructing the story of value. But we're not going back to the old story. We're taking the best pieces of every stage of history, pre-modern, traditional, modern, postmodern. We say no to Jordan Peterson, who says, oh, postmodernity is just idiocy. No, Jordan, it's not. It actually is making some really important points. And we need to absorb those and integrate those for sure, right, into this new story of value, which has the capacity, right, to be understood by a preschooler and by a postdoc, right, student, right, and by an advanced practitioner around the world in every country and every hamlet, right, in every city, in every continent, in every farm, right, every truck driver, every physicist, every truck driver who became a physicist, and every physicist who became a truck driver, and anyone who's got a day job as a physicist and a night job as a truck driver, everybody, right, there's got to be no one who can't immediately hear the story and recognize that this is wisdom. Not because it was imposed on me or manipulated, right, by the immersive environment of the web that actually controlled my common sense through manipulating my fast thinking, aka Kahneman, aka MIT Media Lab, aka Pentland's book, Shared Wisdom, aka the entire immersive environment of the planetary stack of the web. No, not that. No, it's wisdom because she is Sophia, she's Chokhmah. Right? She is the illumination of wisdom itself, because we're not just Homo Armor, we're also Homo sapien, which is wisdom. And there's a wisdom to sapience. There's a wisdom to sapience, and sapience includes the capacity to pay attention, the capacity to have a conversation, right? It includes intimate attachment and the depths of intimate attachment. And all of those exist before at earlier levels. They're first principles and first values, but they exist uniquely at the level of human sapience. So we're not, no more Homo sapiens, Homo amor. We've never said that. We're saying the fulfillment of Homo sapien and Homo amor, where sapience and Eros become one and the same. We realize there's no split between them. We reclaim desire as the desire for wisdom, the desire for kindness. When I left Eli my private message that has now been shared, I said to Eli, well, be powerful in our kindness, right, Eli? So beautiful, right? It's not power over for the sake of domination. I'm powerful in my kindness. I'm powerful in my audacity. I'm powerful in realizing that I make a difference, that I've got to show up. The only way to deal with the shame of powerlessness, right, that is the core of the tragic, is not to go back to a pre-tragic fundamentalism. And a pre-tragic fundamentalism can be religious, or a pre-tragic fundamentalism can be it doesn't matter because nothing matters, so it can be a reductive scientism. Or pre-tragic can also be everyone's bad and I can't make moral distinctions. I make moral equivalences. Moral equivalences are another subtle form of pre-tragic. Now we've got to hit the tragic. We've got to hit the tragic like, oh my God, no, tragic. We got to do all the critiques, right? We do all the critiques of value, all the critiques of the old religions, all the critiques of scientisms, all the critiques of moral equivalence, but not in order to remain critics, but critics who are madly in love. We're skeptical of easy answers, but we're not cynics. Right? A skeptic is looking for truth. A cynic, right, thinks there's no truth and derides everything. No, we think the world's filled with truth. And it's filled with evolving truth, and it's filled with goodness, and it's filled with beauty. And the world is lined with love, right? And so we need to move into the post-tragic. Right? So post-tragic means we reclaim our power to move from homo armor. Armors, I take off the armor of the old ideologies. I take off the armor of the old traumas caused by the old ideologies. I take off, right, the armor of the trauma caused by my early childhood and by the early childhood of humanity. I embrace all of sapience. But then I realize sapience is not just a coincidence of cosmos. It's the wisdom, the innate, right, the intrinsic, the inherent value of cosmos, which is information and meaning and value as one, which comes together as sapience, which discloses its true face as amor, right, the fulfillment of Homo sapien as Homo amor. But we got to get there all the way. We got to get there all the way. We can't stop in the middle. So the reason we've chosen to actually focus all of our energy and all of our time, and as we're doing One Mountain every week, there are conversations happening behind the scenes where we're creating together, many, many people on this call. We have staked places in our unique self symphony. And we're deep in. And we're becoming this new story of value together. Right? And anything you think I'm wrong about, take it as a given that you're right. So anything that kind of like bothers you now, you say, well, you're walking out, wow, he said this, he's totally wrong. Take it as a given that you're right. Fine, you got it. I give it. It's yours. You got it. Don't get stuck there. Don't get stuck in that crazy Jewish guy. Whatever. Don't worry about him. Okay? It's not about him. It's about the new story of value. It's about this new level of loving. It's about this new capacity for becoming a human being, which the human being realizes I am the infinite intimate in person. I am the amorous cosmos in person. And we don't look away. We're not easily wounded. Right? When we disagree fiercely, of course we're fierce. Let's be more fierce. But so tender in our fierceness. With so much history. Right? We're home. That's how we started today. We're home. And at home, we don't have these placid roles that we play to cover up, the hidden. No, we're home. We're home. Everything's on the table. Everything. We can bring it. It's all here. We can't bring it all here every week, but it's all here. We're home. We're filled with power. We're filled with power. Eli realizes if I show up, I change all reality. I'm powerful. Right? We're all powerful. We need each other. We need each other. What a crazy joy to need each other. Right? And to not get that it matters if I show up. I was talking to a friend of mine a few days ago, a very close friend. And I said, wow, you think it doesn't matter if you show up? This person's this shining, radiant, brilliant being. And this person, believe it or not, that's right, you would think it doesn't quite get that it matters how much this person shows up. Like it matters to show up and to show up all the way, blood on the ground. I mean, don't be actually bleeding, right? Just to be clear, blood on the ground means I'm committed. I mean, my heart's ripped open, but my heart's ripped open in a way that, and I want to finish with this. So when I hear that 11 people were killed at the same place I did a Hanukkah party on Bondi Beach, it rips my heart open. Like when I read, right, news, right, of just the horror of both what's happening in the Ukraine and how people have started to talk about it the last year and a half. At the utter alienation from what's actually real and on the ground, and the ability to spin a full story, like in other contexts in the world. When I see Sudan being completely ignored, right? Like, really? Right? It's just like my heart's ripped open every day. Every day. And what we've chosen to do together is to take the most powerful position we can. And the most powerful position we can is to heal the source code itself. And this is whenever I say, Da Vinci's there, the Black Death is sweeping through Europe, right? Sweeping through Europe. There's no cure, though. They have no, I mean, if you look at how they explain the Black Death, oh my God, what medical science had to say about the Black Death gun, you would faint. It wasn't good. They had no idea what to do. And Da Vinci was desperate. But everybody was desperate. So what Da Vinci said is, what Marcello Ficinio said, what Pico della Mirandola said in his great oration on man and on human dignity, was we have to tell a new story of value. And they tried to figure out, well, what does it mean? What does it mean to be a human being? And this small group of people got together And that time between worlds, at that time between stories, and they told the story so powerful that it ushered in all of the dignities of modernity, but it was also flawed. And so it also ushered in the disasters of modernity. We're here to pick up that thread, right? To redress the faults in the plot line, right? To tell the story better, to fix value theory, right? To solve its conundrums, right? To formulate the best articulation of identity, right? To understand and reformulate what relationship means, right? To create a theory of desire, right, that outdoes the kind of the incredible paucity of thought and depth that exists today as a theory of desire, to understand human rights and the relation between need, desire, value, rights, and responsibilities, to revision legal theory, right, to create a new possibility of intimacy in medicine because we re-understand, right, the art of healing in the field of value in an entirely different way, and we understand, right, how healing works in an entirely different way, and on, right? We actually go into the body. We do the work in the body of homo armor to homo amor. We do the work of, right, unique self-realization, right? And we have this community in which we're actually erotic mystics modeling who we must become. Who we must become. That's who we are. We're who we must become. And what we have to do as erotic mystics is we have to become it for everyone. Okay? We have to become it for everyone. David, give us a code. Give us a code and blow us away with the code.
Yes. All right. So we need a new story that is equal to our power. Most specifically, we need a new story of power itself. Part of the evolution of consciousness is an evolution of our experience and narrative on power. As evolutionary unique self, as homo amor, the fulfillment of Homo sapiens, we feel both powerful and humble beyond measure. We are powerful because the impulse of evolution itself pulses as us. We are humbled because we realize that our power is sourced in the grace of the infinite that lives in us in every moment and without which we would cease to exist. Without a cogent narrative of power, all that is sacred, from relationships to purpose to sex, lose their core ethos and eros.
Thank you, Dr. Marc Gafni. That was wild and epic and fierce and powerful. And I think we can all feel the power rising in our bodies as we are listening. Marc described today so much pain, so much suffering that is happening in the world. And as he also says, the world is full of outrageous pain, but the only response is outrageous love. And that's what we get to do together. And how do we do that? We do that by committing our outrageous acts of love. And there's a whole beautiful teaching about how to do that, what to do. But today I want to make it very, very simple for everyone. The outrageous act of love that each and every one of us here has to commit every week, like no matter what, as Marc said, blood on the ground, is very simple: writing reviews on Amazon. And it might sound like a very practical thing, like, oh, I can do it maybe next week, but it's actually a deep, mystical, powerful practice. Because today we spoke about how the web is completely without any value. There's a collapse of value on the web, in the tech plaque, in this Skinner's box that Marc spoke about today. And so we, as outrageous lovers, we have the power to pour in outrageous love into that webplex by writing reviews as outrageous love notes on the web. So I'm going to show you exactly how you can do that. If we go to, let me share my screen, Amazon.com. What you do in the top search bar, you can search for Marc Gafni. You can also search for the titles, but this is easiest. Then you can click here on books to make sure you're searching in books. Then you will come to this page. This is where you can find all the books that we have published. Let me see, why is it going there? All of these books: Tears, Loving Your Way to Enlightenment, The Erotic Cosmos, A Return to Eros. You can find them all here. And I want to make a commitment to ourselves that we're actually going to go here and we're going to write reviews on all of these books in the next weeks, days, months. It's not like, oh, let me write one review and then I'm done. No, we have to make this our core practice as a community to do this all the time together. And Christina Amelong, she spoke about it in the beginning. She is our queen of reviews. So if anyone has a question or you need help doing this, she's going to, together with all of us, evoke us to do this practice, but this is the core practice that we're going to be doing together. So what you do is you scroll down, for example, on one of the book pages. Let me find the right spot. You have to scroll through some of this, and then you go here. At the bottom, you see customer reviews. And then here you can say, write a customer review. There it is. Okay. So then you can write a short story here. This is an amazing book. You can make it personal, you can make it long, short, it doesn't matter. Most important is that your voice and your message is out there. And then you just click submit, and that is all that you need to do. And then you go to the next book, you write another one. Now, what is important to know about this is that you do need a spending of a minimum of $50 on your Amazon account, and that will give you the power to write a review. So that's the only thing that you need to do. So thank you for doing that. I'm super excited.